Today I welcome you into this documentary where we will talk about one of the Indian Army's most interesting venture into liberating Bangladesh in the 1971 war. Yes, today I'm going to talk about this legendary infantry unit and its commander that took part in liberating Bangladesh, coming down all the way from Tura in Meghalaya down south towards Dhaka. This infantry unit is called as the 95 Mountain Brigade. This brigade was commanded by the legendary infantry commander and paratrooper Brigadier Hardev Singh Kler. The 95 Mountain Brigade was a part of the 101 Communication Zone. This division was commanded by General Gurbaksh Singh Gill. During the Bangladesh Liberation War of 1971, the 101 Communication Zone was operating closely in the areas of Guwahati and also in Shillong. The 101 Communication Zone was directly involved in training Mukti Bahini fighters, alongside raising the Z Force Infantry Brigade, which was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Ziaur Rahman, later Lieutenant General in the Bangladesh Army. The 101 Communication Zone of the Indian Army had the 95 Mountain Brigade, the 167 Infantry Brigade under the command of Brigadier Irani, the 312 Air Defense Brigade, the 342 Independent Air Defense Brigade, the 56 Mountain Regiment, the FG Sector Brigade under the command of Brigadier Sant Singh, and the 5 Mountain Brigade. Amongst all of these fighting forces, the 95 Mountain Brigade was the main fighting force in the entire 101 Communication Zone. Long before the war had started, the 95 Mountain Brigade was far away from Bangladesh. It was called in the month of October to move up to Joshipara, just south of Tura in Meghalaya, pretty close to the Bangladesh border. Now, this brigade had 3 infantry battalions. The first, Maratha Light Infantry, which is popularly called as the Jangi Paltan in the Indian Army. It was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Kuldeep Singh Brar. The 13 Rajputana Rifles, which was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel Raghavan. And the 13 Guards, which was commanded by Lieutenant Colonel M.S. Sodhi. The 13 Rajputana Rifles and the 13 Guards were actually raised for counter-insurgency operations in the Naga Hills. Coming to Tura in Meghalaya, at first, what the 95 Mountain Brigade did was give training to the Z Force Infantry Brigade of the Mukti Bahini. Eventually, it was clear that India had to get involved in the liberation of Bangladesh. Hence, Brigadier Hardev Singh Kler started gathering intel about the Pakistani army inside Bangladesh from the local Mukti Bahini and from the people. He sent ambush patrols from the 1st Maratha Light Infantry under the command of 2nd Lieutenant B.K. Panwar to gain intel about the enemy. This first patrol that was sent inside Bangladesh had actually ambushed a mail vehicle of the Pakistani 93 Infantry Brigade. From this vehicle, important intel said the Pakistani 93 Infantry Brigade was the only fighting force of the Pakistani 36th Infantry Division. This 93 Infantry Brigade was based in the town of Mymensingh and was under the command of Brigadier Qadir. Now, as per more intel, it was realized that the 36th Infantry Division of the Pakistani Army had the East Pakistan Civil Armed Force, the Pakistani militia, which was brought from West Pakistan to East Pakistan, and of course, the local Razakars and the anti-liberation forces. Now, the 93 Infantry Brigade, based in Mymensingh, had 2 infantry battalions, the 31 Baluch and the 33 Punjab. The 31 Baluch was actually at Jamalpur and had the control of the towns of Bakshiganj, Jamalpur, and the Kamalpur border outpost, while the 33 Punjab was mostly based at Mymensingh. So as you can see, this is where the 95 Mountain Brigade was. Tura, Meghalaya, Tura. This is the Pakistani 93 Infantry Brigade. Brigadier Qadir commands this brigade, and here with the towns of Mymensingh, Bakshiganj, Kamalpur, Jamalpur here, and then Tangail, and somewhere here was Dhaka. So this entire enclave in red was under the command of the Pakistani 93 Brigade. The 33 Punjab was here at Mymensingh. The 31 Baluch was here at Jamalpur. So this is going to be the operational area of the 93 Brigade. Fortunately, the 93 Infantry Brigade had no armor support, and they had only 1 battery of 120mm motors available at the Jamalpur garrison. To understand more about the Jamalpur garrison that had the 31 Baluch there, 2 ambush patrols with Mukti Bahini forces and with the teams of 2nd Lieutenant R. Mohan and 2nd Lieutenant A.K. Rajpal were sent for recon missions. They stayed about a week inside Bangladesh and learned more about the enemy movements and patrols of the 31 Baluch near the town of Jamalpur. These boys were from the Indian Army Education Corps. From the initial recon, it was clear that the 31 Baluch of the Pakistani 93 Infantry Brigade had deployed a company at Bakshiganj, a company at the Kamalpur border outpost close to India, and with the main battalion of the 31 Baluch being deployed at Jamalpur. It was clear to Brigadier Hardev Singh Kler, commander of the 95 Mountain Brigade, that to move up to Dhaka, more than capturing Maimansingh, the route towards Dhaka was needed to be cleared through Bakshiganj, Jamalpur, and Tangail down south. He knew that he had the longest route to cover. Hence, Maimansingh was of no strategic value. The task to liberate Maimansingh was instead given to the FG Brigade commander, Brigadier Sant Singh. So I hope you can understand. 95 Mountain Brigade being here, Mukti Bahini is being here, Z Force with the 11th sector Mukti Bahini troops under the command of Major Abu Tahir. Kamalpur BOP was held by one company under the command, one company of the Pakistani 31 Baluch under the command of Captain Ahsan Malik. Bakshiganj garrison was here. This was under the command of Major Ayub from the 31 Baluch itself. The 31 Baluch here had his garrison at Jamalpur. This place, Maimansingh, as said, was going to be attacked by the FG Sector Brigade under the command of Brigadier Sant Singh. And this amount of area was actually under the operational command, the red line, all these red lines of the Pakistani 93 Infantry Brigade. I hope you can understand. Now, let's go into the action. But for this, the 95 Mountain Brigade also needed to know more about the enemy's strength and the enemy's capabilities. Hence, there was one operation that was needed to be done to understand the enemy's capabilities, and for this, the Mukti Bahini was also needed. The 1st Maratha Light Infantry, led by Lieutenant Colonel Brad, decided to launch an attack with the Mukti Bahini at Chilamari. Chilamari was actually a location based in the middle of the Brahmaputra River, where the river itself was about 1 kilometer wide, no less than a mile wide, and it needed the use of boats to ferry the men across. Chilamari was a Pakistani stronghold that mostly had Razakars, but they did have elements of the Pakistani 31 Baluch in bunkers. And here on motor boats and country boats, both Mukti Bahini forces and the 1st Maratha Light Infantry operatives landed. But the Mukti Bahini operatives were the first to land, and they eventually cleared out the Pakistani bunkers, captured the Razakars, but they also found many local women to have been held as captive inside the bunkers. When these bunkers had fallen, these women had come out raising their hands. After the liberation of Chilamari and the island group, the locals had welcomed the Mukti Bahini and the Marathas very jubilantly. After this victory at Chilamari, Brigadier Kler and Lieutenant Colonel Brad had actually played cards in one of the islands, spending their Diwali night there. The next operation was to test the enemy at Kamalpur border outpost. Here, as said before, Captain Ahsan Malik from the 31 Baluch was in this post with the company of Pakistani troops, and the Mukti Bahini had failed 6 times to take this border outpost, even before the Indian army had come in for the offensives. Hence, it was important for the Indian army to prove their guts in destroying Kamalpur border outpost. The first attack of the Indian Army's 95 Mountain Brigade was led by the 13 guards under the command of Lieutenant Colonel M.S. Sodhi onto the Kamalpur border outpost. And for additional support, elements from the 1st Maratha Light Infantry had gone in to outflank the border outpost and prevent additional reinforcements coming down from Bakshiganj to help the border outpost at Kamalpur. They had cut off these reinforcements, and also they had destroyed mortar troops that were deployed to support the Kamalpur border outpost. But the attack of the 13 guards had faltered. In the offensive of the 13 guards, Major Surinder Singh was hit in the leg from a machine gun burst. Brigadier Hardev Singh Kler had moved up with his jeep after hearing his distress call over the net, and had moved in with his jeep and had rescued him from the field of fire. The defenses at Kamalpur border outpost was too strong to be taken. Meanwhile, a series of disasters were going to strike the 95 Mountain Brigade. Major Watts from the engineers had actually volunteered to go in with the 1st Maratha Light Infantry to ambush this resupply and to destroy these mortar troops that were going to be deployed to support the Kamalpur outpost. He had gone in. The elements of the 1st Maratha Light Infantry were actually successful, and they had captured about 4 Pakistani 120mm mortars. Before going in with the Marathas, he had actually taken permission from Brigadier Kler, and Brigadier Kler had actually given the permission. Hence, he went there and he was actually fixing explosives to destroy these mortars. He took out three of them one by one, but while fixing an explosive on the last mortar, a Pakistani sniper from the distance had actually shot him dead. He was killed instantly. The next baptism of fire was going to be led by the 13 Rajputana Rifles from the 95 Mountain Brigade. The 13 Rajputana Rifles was led by Lieutenant Colonel Raghavan, and when his troops attacked the Kamalpur border outpost, he was actually controlling the momentum of the attack from inside a trench. At that time, Pakistanis from inside Kamalpur border outpost had opened up heavy mortar barrages on the advancing troops of the 13 Rajdif. They got pinned down, and a mortar had landed actually inside the trench of Lieutenant Colonel Raghavan. A Havildar was there, and his head was blown off. The head dropped back to the trench, and seeing the sight of this horrible dismemberment, Lieutenant Colonel Raghavan had got up from the trench and had fled. Seeing this, the entire troops of the 13th Rajput had started fleeing. Brigadier Hardev Singh Kler was astonished, and he decided to sack Lieutenant Colonel Raghavan. Major Sangwan, the 2IC, was promoted as the commanding officer of the 13th Rajput after sacking Lieutenant Colonel Raghavan. Major Sangwan was promoted as Lieutenant Colonel. On the 15th of November, Major Ayub, Bakshiganj garrison commander, was moving towards Kamalpur with a team of foreign correspondents to show the Indian Army's involvement in Bangladesh. This jeep convoy was ambushed by the 1st Maratha Light Infantry, forcing Major Ayub and all of that party to flee back towards Bakshiganj. The Mukti Bahini had also launched their own offensive, where Major Abu Tahir, the commander of the Sector 11 troops of the Mukti Bahini, had his leg blown off from a mortar detonation very close to him. He was evacuated out from the battlefield. That was the strength of the Pakistani forces inside Kamalpur. It was clear to the 95 Mountain Brigade that without the help of the Indian Air Force, Kamalpur border outpost cannot be captured. Hence, General Gurbaksh Singh Gill, GOC of the 101 Communication Zone, had assigned Flying Officer Suresh Khanna to be the forward air controller to bring in the IAF whenever needed. But the official war against Pakistan was not yet declared. Only as of now, these hit-and-run operations alongside the Mukti Bahini was going on. So tell me, if you are Brigadier Hardev Singh Kler, what would you have done next? Please like and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done it yet. Thank you. And stay tuned to watch more. The official war against Pakistan has not yet been declared.